All right, hi everybody. Thanks for joining us for our second installment of Diablo Magazine's Dig In Comfort Food series, where we're spotlighting local feel-good food. My name is Ethan Fletcher. I'm the food editor of Diablo Magazine, and I'll be your host this afternoon. Just a little reminder: this Dig In episode is being recorded and will be shared following the event. All registrants will receive an email invitation to view and share if you so desire. Let's see. So first, I'd like to start off just by thanking our sponsor, Xfinity. They're going to be sponsoring all 5 of our Dig In series. They sponsored last week's as well. And so just to set it up, every November we do a food issue, and this year was no different. It presented, unique difficulties, seeing as how the food world has sort of been turned upside down this year, along with everything else. And so we kind of attacked it from a few different angles. We had a story, a feature about our local sort of restaurateurs and chefs and how they've been pivoting and responding to the pandemic and the new realities. We had a story about cooking at home and how to kind of elevate your food game, because everybody's doing a little bit more cooking these days. And our final story, our cover story, was about a trend that we've been seeing, comfort food. And with that, it's kind of in times of stress, everybody kind of retreats to their favorite comfort foods. And we tried to spotlight 5 foods that kind of were emblematic of that trend. We talked about fried chicken, we talked about dessert, we talked about sandwiches, and one of the things we talked about was bread, sort of a basic food that it seems like everybody's been either trying to make or just eating more of these days. And along that line, I thought the perfect person to kind of guide us through the bread game is Gabby Lubaba. She's the head baker and owner of East Bay Bakery. Welcome, Gabby.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. So let's see. Let's see, Gabby. You sort of seem to pop up out of nowhere. I know. I first noticed you on Instagram, and I was like, "What are those incredible pastries that you're making?" So maybe you can tell me about your business when you started.
We started about 2 years ago in January.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like cold winter season. Which is pretty uncommon to start a farmers market business, but we did it anyway.
How was that at first?
It was pretty rough. Then it got better as spring comes. So
yeah. And you're in 2 farmers markets, is that right?
Yeah, we're at Orinda Farmers Market every Saturday, and then Walnut Creek Farmers Market every Sunday.
Great. And can you tell me a little about the bakery, kind of what your focus is and what you wanted to emphasize with what you're baking?
Sure. So we're specializing in French baked goods, croissants, bread, sourdough, baguettes, and focaccias. And we also do seasonal things like Thanksgiving's coming up, so we have pies and cakes and all those kind of stuff.
Sounds good. This is must be the busy time of year for you.
It is, yes. Yeah. It's the busiest time for all bakeries. So,
yeah, I'm sure. So the focus of our food issue and the comfort food story was kind of how it's impacted people and their eating habits. Have you seen any sort of change in what people are getting at the farmers market, or what people are kind of asking for?
Yeah, for sure. I think people want to do less trips to the grocery store, so they would buy bulks, more bread, actually, and then more sweet stuff too.
Yeah, that seems like the sweet thing is.
The sweet thing, yeah.
Let's see. Well, it's a good time. We actually did a poll of our Diablo readers, and we asked them what their favorite bread was, and so it's a good time to kind of share the results. Let's see. So the last place, which was no real surprise to me, was pumpernickel, which that's kind of an acquired taste. Which I've never really acquired, so nobody seemed to like that one. There was more votes for stuff like country white and breakfast like bagels and English muffins. And at the top of the list, our top 3 were ciabatta, sourdough baguettes, and focaccia, which is you just so happens that you're going to be making focaccia for us today, right?
Yes, correct.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, can you tell us a little bit about focaccia? I know you said that it's kind of a good starter bread to make at home. Can you tell us why that is?
Yeah. So the reason why focaccia is easy for beginners is because you don't really need to shape it. Whereas sourdough, you have to shape it, put it in a basket, and it requires a lot of practice to do that. Whereas focaccia, you just bake out of a sheet pan. You don't have to do anything. It's just sitting there, and you just let it sit and ferment, and then put it in the oven.
Put in the oven, yeah. And it's I've always loved focaccia, and it's kind of some of the things. Let's see, I mean, it's kind of like a blank slate, right? I mean, you can kind of put whatever you want on it, right?
For sure. Yeah, you can like cut it in half, make it into sandwiches, or serve it with a side of salad. It's for everything really.
Yeah, and stuffing, right, for Thanksgiving.
Stuffing for Thanksgiving, yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
Sure.
So keep that in mind, folks, if you do decide to tackle focaccia. Let's see, let's see. Sorry, and one other thing I liked about focaccia that I always liked, and I think a lot of people like, is sort of the light airiness about it, and then that sort of super crispy olive oily crust. Can you tell us a little bit about what gives it that airiness that's so appealing?
So the airiness from focaccia actually is the result from the overnight fermentation. It actually undergoes through a series of 2 fermentations overnight. So first we're gonna make this pre-fermented dough called poulish, and poulish is just flour, water, and yeast, and that we're going to ferment overnight so it builds flavor. Okay. And then we're going to add that pre-fermented dough into our actual focaccia too.
So this is something you don't really want to rush. You want to do.
No,
you want to
yeah,
be able to take
definitely.
your time and plan ahead. Plan at least a day ahead.
For sure, yeah, a day ahead.
Okay. Great. Well, let's see. Why don't we get going? So this is you're going to show us about the poulish phase and the pre-dough. Okay.
Yes. So the poulish, we're going to start with some flour. We're going to do about 250 grams of flour. Okay. And then about just 1 gram of yeast. So
the yeast, okay.
The yeast, we're going to do metric measurements here because it's just more accurate than cups and other kinds of measurements.
You tend to do that with your baking?
Yeah, and I recommend for any bakers at home who likes to make bread and just wanted to do more seriously, I recommend investing in like little scale, like $30 from Amazon or something. Okay.
And they say baking is a little bit more of a science than an art, so the measurements are pretty important.
Measurements are pretty important. Yeah.
And where do you get the yeast, and what kind of flour do you use?
So for the poulish, it doesn't matter. You can use just any regular white bread flour. All-purpose works, but bread flour is recommended. Okay. Yeah. And then the yeast, you can get an instant yeast. Don't get the active dry yeast. I'd highly recommend the instant yeast because you don't have to put it in a warm water first and let it bubble and whatnot. Okay, so you can just put it directly into the flour and mix it up. Okay, great. Yeah. So this is just flour, yeast, and then is this warm water? This is warm water, also 250 grams. So it's poulish is equal parts of water and equal parts of yeast.
It makes it easier?
Yeah. And then to this, I'm going to mix it.
Okay. Any tips on mixing it? Just make sure it gets even throughout.
Yeah, just make sure you don't have any dry flour bits. Usually it gets stuck in the bottom. But yeah, it's just mixing with your hand. I don't recommend using spatula or just get it in there. Yeah.
It's kind of fun, right?
It is.
Get it on your hands a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm sure the kids could probably.
Kids can probably participate. Yeah.
Depending on how old they are, I can see my twin 4-year-olds really messing things up.
It's going to be fun for them, actually.
Yeah.
I
could see a little bit ending up on the wall. That's the only problem.
Yeah.
So just mix it up and make sure it's.
Just mix it up, and then.
What is this tool that you're using?
This is called a dough scraper.
Okay.
Highly recommend if you're trying to make sourdough breads or any kind of bread to invest in one of these. They're very cheap too.
Yeah, and that just kind of scrapes the residual dough. Okay.
Yes. So yeah, this is the pre-fermented dough. Okay. We're gonna cover this with the plastic, and then we're gonna put it in room temperature for 8 to 12 hours or overnight.
Room temperature. Okay, so not in the refrigerator. Just room temperature. Okay, and you cover it with plastic.
Cover it with plastic. You don't want any air inside, and and that's the pre-fermented dough. So if you want to bake focaccia the next day, make this the night before.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have to worry about it sitting in the sun, or just?
Not really. Okay. Just like your kitchen counter should be okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's the first part.
That's the first part, and then I actually have the poulish made last night, and so you see how it the difference of the volume too.
Yeah.
I can show it in the camera. So this is the newly mixed, and then this is after 8 hours.
So does it rise? Is there a certain amount that it's supposed to rise, or is it?
So as soon as you see like a little bit of a dome on the top, then it's ready.
Okay, great. I can see some bubbling.
Some
coming
bubbles,
up.
yeah, from the fermentation overnight.
Okay, and you want to see that, obviously.
Oh yeah, you want to see that. So I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna wash my hands real quick.
Okay, great. Well, we might as well just a reminder that if anybody has questions, we do have a chat function, so you can ask them and I'll relay them to Gabby. I might as well take this opportunity while Gabby's washing her hand to announce our winner of the $100 gift card from Xfinity. Thanks again to Xfinity for letting us. We're going to have one of our viewers is going to be the lucky winner of that. And let's see, it is Kevin M. Kevin M. Congratulations! You're going to get a. We'll follow up with you via email and organize how you can get that gift card and hopefully use it for some delicious bread or supplies to make that bread. Let's see. Oh, we have a question. Will we be sending the recipes out after the webinar? Is that possible to get a recipe?
Yeah, for sure. We can share the recipe.
Okay, perfect. So yes, we will. We'll send that recipe out. And again, a reminder that this video will be online on diablomag.com, so you can rewatch it and slow it down or speed it up or whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
Okay. So what's the next step?
All right. The next step is we're gonna mix the actual focaccia dough.
Okay.
So for the actual recipe for the dough, you need 1 kilograms of flour.
Okay.
And there's different types of flour that you can use, but for focaccia, I highly recommend if you can find pizza flour, that would be really great.
And actually, I've noticed that a lot of Italian restaurants are actually selling these kits now.
Yeah.
Some of them are selling flour, so that's not a bad place to look for that.
No, not at all.
And so it's just general flour for this, but with the second step, you recommend pizza specific flour.
Yeah, pizza flour. The reason why is because pizza flour have like this really thin crust that you really want to get for making focaccia.
Okay.
Bread flour works too, but the crust is going to be a tiny bit chewier.
Okay, and so you like that kind of that crispy crust.
Crispy crust.
From that.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah. So you have to prepare a big bowl.
Okay,
and then
a big bowl.
And then first we start off with the liquids, so that you don't get any flour in the bottom.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay.
This is 900 grams of warm water.
Warm water. And how warm is it? Not boiling, obviously.
Not boiling hot. If you have a thermometer at home, it's about 78 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit.
Okay.
And then to that, we're gonna add the flour. Next is the yeast and the salt.
Okay.
This is about 2 grams of yeast and then 20 grams of salt.
And this is the same instant yeast that you used before? Okay.
Yes. You can just put it together. And then you're gonna mix it.
Mix it up. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. And again, same thing as last time. Just make sure everything, all the water gets incorporated into the flour.
Yes. Yes. And you can probably get away with a KitchenAid mixer if you have them at home.
I was
But
going to ask you.
yeah, but I think just mixing it. There's 3 types of mixing, especially for bread. And you don't. If sometimes with the KitchenAid you can overmix it.
Really?
And that's gonna make the focaccia actually pretty chewy, which you don't want. You want a light airy.
Okay. So in general, do you want to err on the side of not over mixing it? And,
Yeah.
Okay. So the more you mix it, the kind of chewier, and
tougher.
harder.
Yeah, a little bit tougher.
Okay.
So when you get this kind of consistency, you want to add the olive oil.
Mm-hmm.
This is about 120 grams of olive oil.
Okay. And what olive oil do you use?
I use just regular olive oil. I mean, you can use extra virgin olive oil, but then once it's baked, you don't really smell that,
Right.
extra virgin scent.
So that might be something you use finishing, maybe.
Finishing, yeah, for sure.
Okay. Let's see. We do have one question. It says Diane says, when I've tried focaccia, the top comes out hard. How do I get a soft top?
Ooh, I would say that would be when the bread is hard. It would be it's a little bit long in the oven. So if you focaccia is the type of bread that you have to bake at a high temperature for like no more than 25 minutes.
Okay.
So maybe you've been baking it for half an hour, so that gets the top tougher.
Okay. So take it out a little bit earlier, maybe.
A little bit earlier, but higher temperature.
Higher temperature.
Yes.
Okay. And let's see. Somebody was asking if they can get the recipe in cups and not in metric.
Cups.
You know what? I can do that on my end.
Yeah.
Through the magic of editing, we will make sure that
We can probably, we can scale it and then like
exactly.
Figure it out.
Yeah, if you send us the recipe, then we'll convert it.
convert it.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good.
Let's see. Okay, somebody was asking, what are the 3 types of mixing?
The 3 types of mixing is first you have the intensive. This is very slow mixing because you're mixing it with hand.
Right.
So you're not like super working it hard. You don't want to build too much gluten in focaccia.
Okay.
But there's also improved mix, the second one. Improved mix is when you want to make bread like baguettes. So you want it to be mixed and you want it to have volume and pretty
a little harder.
Yeah, but then you don't want it to be super and both improved and intensive mix is done with the mixer.
Okay.
But this one is just slow mixing. You're using your hand. And then the third one is the intensive mix. It's for bread that has sugar, butter, like brioche or milk bread.
Okay.
That takes a little long for the gluten to be built. So that's why you have to mix it for sometimes even 20 plus minutes.
And that's what you do in the professional mixer.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Gotcha. Great.
Yep, there we go.
That looks beautiful.
So yeah, after this step, again, you wanted to ferment it overnight and cover it with a plastic wrap, or if you have a container with a lid on, you can do that. You can transfer that there. You can transfer it in this container to like a bigger one, but I highly recommend to oil the container first so that when you want to work it out, put it on the counter, it's easy to get out of the container.
Okay, good tip. So this you're going to allow to sit overnight as well?
Overnight, but this time not at room temperature.
Okay.
But we're going to put it in the refrigerator.
In the refrigerator?
Refrigerator.
Sit overnight.
Yeah.
Okay.
So because now it has, oh, actually I forgot to put the Polish. We're going to have to put the Polish in too. So yeah, we're going to put it in the refrigerator because the temperature is lower. So it's not going to bubble like crazy.
Okay. So you don't want it to bubble like crazy in this case?
No, you don't want to bubble like crazy in this case.
And how long do you let this sit generally, or what's sort of the minimum and the maximum for this?
So the longer it sits in the refrigerator, the more flavor it builds. But I don't want to, I would say no more than 12 hours.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what would sort of be the minimum if you did this in the morning? Could you make it at night? Or,
oh yeah, that works too. Like about I think maybe 6 to 8 hours.
6 to 8 hours. Okay,
yeah,
perfect.
would be the
So
minimum.
You could do the Polish overnight.
Overnight.
And then do this in the morning, and it would be ready to put in the oven by the evening.
By the evening, yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, for sure. For dinner.
Great. And let's see, one more question. What's the difference between mixing and kneading?
Kneading. So mixing is just what I'm doing right now. But kneading is the process of actually trying to build gluten.
Okay.
So this is kneading. Like, because also focaccia and this recipe, it has 90% of water.
Okay.
So 90% of water, that means it's really hard for you to actually knead. It doesn't need any kneading. And
Because
usually,
it's a little softer.
yeah, a little softer, and it's really hard to like actually work it. So kneading is usually done with, again, breads like that has sugar, butter, like brioche or milk bread. Then you want to knead it, and kneading is you want to knead until you get a smooth surface. Whereas this bread is like very rough.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So I mean, I can see it's still moving around quite a bit. It's not really solidifying very much. So.
Yeah.
And as far as when you know it's done, is that just by feel, or is it just
For the focaccia?
Yeah, exactly.
For the focaccia, as soon as you don't see any more dry flour in the bottom, then you know it's done.
Okay.
Yeah. So that took me about maybe 5 minutes, more or less. And you can see this recipe, again, it has 90% water. So this is the consistency that you want.
Okay.
Like very light.
Consistency of goo, I would say.
Goo, yeah.
Delicious goo.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. And I've seen recipes. Do you always put olive oil in to the dough before to the dough, or can you, or is that an option? Focaccia?
So the oil helps the bread to be a little bit more softer too, like versus bread, like for example baguettes. Baguettes don't have any oil in them, so baguettes tend to be like I don't want to say tough, but you know, less airy.
Okay.
So yeah, after this step, you're gonna refrigerate it overnight, and then actually I'm gonna come back and wash my hand again.
Okay.
I'll be right back.
Yeah, and let's see. Oh, just want to take this time to remind. Oh, and I should mention that we are in where we are right now. Gabby works out of a commercial kitchen, Kitchen 812. Is that right, Gabby? Yeah. Kitchen 812, which is a commercial kitchen in Pinole. It's a lovely spot, ton of sunlight, and so if you hear anything in the background, that's other chefs and food workers preparing things. I think about 15 people work out of this kitchen.
All right. So this is how it looks like before, and this is how it looks like after overnight fermented.
Wow, look at those bubbles.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
and this was refrigerated.
This was refrigerated. You can touch it. It's still pretty cold. Came out of the refrigerator. So you can tell that the volume has maybe tripled in size.
Tripled, yeah.
And then you can see, this is when you know your focaccia is successful, is when you can see big bubbles.
Yeah.
And when you shake it, you can see how it's like very light.
So still a similar consistency to that. It's just risen.
Yeah, similar consistency, but the surface is a little bit smoother.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
So once you have that, we're ready to assemble.
Great.
You can get this sheet pan. They're very cheap, maybe $5 from a restaurant supply store or Amazon.
And that's like a half sheet pan?
It's a half sheet pan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
And you need a parchment paper.
And it doesn't need to be non-stick or anything. You just need the parchment.
Just parchment is fine. And then you're gonna put some olive oil here. So there's no really like how much olive oil you need, as long as you want to make sure you oil the sides, because the dough might stick to the side as well.
Okay, that's a good tip. And let's see, how much will this recipe make? Is it just one sheet? Is that right?
One sheet pan.
Okay.
Yeah. So the total weight of this dough is about 1.9 kilo, about 2 kilograms.
Okay.
So 2 kilograms will fit one sheet pan.
Okay. Great. And let's see, we have another question. If there's no bubbles, can you do anything? Does that mean it's just not working, or does it need more time? Or
yeah, so if there's no bubbles, I would say check your yeast. Sometimes when you, especially if you have yeast in your counter, just sitting in your kitchen counter, it might gone bad and it might not be as active. Okay. So I would say at that point, redo it. Yeah, I mean, you can still bake it, and maybe you can make it into a pizza. You know, it's flat.
Right,
you know,
that's true,
yeah, you can make it. You can still bake it.
Oh, that's a great tip. So you just have a pizza night with the
just
family.
A pizza night, yeah. So at this point, we're gonna transfer this into the counter, or working surface. So what I'm doing is with the scraper, just kind of agitate it a little bit, and then flip.
Just let it drop.
Yeah, so
let gravity do the work.
Like gravity do the work, and it comes out very easily because we've oiled the pan before.
You oiled the pan before. Okay.
Yes.
That's good.
Yeah. So now.
Okay. Now the transfer. This is what I'm curious about.
Yeah, you can pretty much transfer it directly from the bowl to the sheet pan.
Right. Okay.
But if you're making like big dough, like if you want to make two of these, then you have to put in a counter first.
Right. If you know exactly that you're making one pan, you could have just dropped that into the pan directly.
Yeah, you can drop it to the pan directly. You don't need any flour or anything actually.
Really?
Okay. No. So just kind of do that and then do your best.
Just go for it. You think? Yeah.
Just go for it in one
No
go.
hesitation. Yeah.
Yeah, in one go.
I could imagine. Yes. Yeah.
And then this leftover bits, you can. The scraper is really, really functional for just.
Yeah. Yeah. You've been using it for.
Yeah. So you might not fill the pan yet. You're not gonna fill up the corners yet.
Okay.
But I would say at this point, you see how there's like little bits of bubbles in here. You actually want that, and you don't want to stretch it. You don't want to.
Okay. You don't want to pop them.
You don't want to pop them.
Okay.
Yeah. Let it actually sit. You can cheese them a little bit to the side, like
That's
that.
interesting. So less sort of physical stretching and kind of letting it kind of spread out on its own.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Is that just because you don't want to mess with it overly any more than you have to?
yeah, you don't want to mess it up, and then also the more you work on it, the less scary it's gonna come out. Yeah. So at this point, we're gonna leave it on the sheet pan at a room temperature. If you have like a plastic or something to cover it, would be great. You're gonna leave it for about an hour to an hour and a half.
So you want it to get to room temperature?
Yes, you want it to get room temperature because it's still cold from the fridge as well.
And if you don't do that, will it tend not to be as light and airy? I'm assuming is that right?
Yes, you still need that second proofing before it hits the oven.
Okay.
Yeah. So after 1 hour, you'll see that it's actually gonna fill up the sheet pan by itself. You don't even have to stretch it anymore.
Interesting. So just try to get it as stretched out as possible, or
Yeah.
a little bit, and that will kind of just stretch out on its own.
Yeah, it's gonna stretch out on its own. So again, this is a very easy bread for beginners. No shaping,
I was gonna
nothing.
say, you just let gravity do the work.
Yeah. So after that, we're gonna drizzle some olive oil too.
Oh, great, a little extra. So this is you don't have to be shy with olive oil.
No, honestly, the more olive oil you put, the crispier the top's gonna get.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
There's a question. What is the scraper called that you're using?
This is just a dough scraper. There's two types. This is a plastic one.
And this is flexible, right?
This is flexible, yeah. And I recommend getting the plastic one actually, because if you're mixing in a mixer, this can bend in the bowl, whereas the metal scraper is not gonna. It's actually gonna be a little hard.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So.
Wow, look at that. Beautiful. It's getting sort of a golden yellow.
Golden yellow, yeah. You want to spread the olive oil evenly.
Okay.
So.
And just enough to kind of cover it, and you can see it pools a little bit. And
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And let's pretend this is an hour and a half later.
Let's do that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, so you're gonna wanna. Focaccia has this look that has like dimples on it.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
So that's
sure.
like the signature look of focaccia. So you don't want to like work it on too much.
Yep.
And you actually don't need any tool other than your fingers.
Okay. Yeah.
So just make sure that your fingers are oiled enough. And then you want to help me out here?
Sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
You can do this part.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you do use all the fingers?
Yeah, all 5, and then just slowly press it. And then little bubbles are gonna come out, and that's great. That's what you want.
That's what you want. Okay.
Yeah. Don't be shy. You can like work it out.
Yeah.
A little more, yeah.
No, I wish people at home could feel this. It's very very comforting.
It is. Yeah, it's very therapeutic actually.
Yeah. Yeah, it is so nice to be able to just feel it by hand.
Yeah.
The unique thing about bread.
All right. Yeah.
And these are creating sort of pockets where the olive oil can kind of collect and any toppings that you put on there, right?
For sure. Yeah. So those little crevices has olive oil in there, and that's gonna make the focaccia really delicious.
Okay.
All right. So now we move on to the fun stuff.
The toppings,
The
I know.
toppings, yeah.
And again, this is really up to
It's
to
really
you,
up to you.
whatever you like, right?
Yeah. I know sometimes there's focaccia with peaches, which is really awesome too.
Peaches, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
peaches when peaches is in season.
Okay.
And a little bit of cheese. Or we're doing savory today.
Okay.
The classic focaccia has rosemary in it. So we're gonna do. You wanna help me with the rosemary?
Sure. Yeah.
I have cheese and a grape tomato too, so we're gonna do half and half. How about that?
Great. Yep. Sounds good. And just kind of sprinkle it all
Yeah, just kind of sprinkle all over it. And when you do rosemary or thyme or any sort of herbs, I highly recommend to chop it very finely because you don't want like big rosemary bites.
You don't want to be pulling sprigs out of your teeth.
Yeah, for sure.
And just as liberally as you want.
Yeah, as liberal as you want. And then we have cherry tomato and cheddar for the other half. You can do whole cherry tomatoes or cutting it in half. I think looks prettier.
Yeah, part of it is I've noticed with focaccia, you get these places that, like in Italy or more and more in the East Bay, where you see these displays and it's like you see all these different toppings, and it's just sort of a beautiful thing to go in and look at as well.
Yeah, so be creative. You can put anything in there. And when you put toppings, for example, like tomato, it has like uneven surfaces, so push it very like deep. Okay. Because this is gonna bump. Yeah, it's gonna rise up.
And you want it to be in.
You want it to be in there.
Yeah, the dough versus sort of popping up.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you have any other favorite toppings or that you like to do with the focaccia? What do you sell at the market?
So at the market, we do the classic rosemary and sea salt. And then our favorite is actually also the caramelized onion. It makes really great bread.
Great.
Yeah.
And so you'll caramelize the onion beforehand and then put that on top?
Yeah, you slice them and then you cook the caramelized the onion with some olive oil, sugar, and salt.
Okay, well. It's funny you don't hear about the sweet focaccia, but you can do that.
Yeah, you can do that too. That's a great kind of like a breakfast idea too. Actually,
it's true. Yeah. And it can be seasonal, whatever you find at the
whatever
market,
you find at the market.
And people will be at the market.
Exactly. You can do a mix of herbs as well. And you can do like a mix of rosemary, thyme. That's fun too. And this dough, actually, you can also do ciabatta too, if you like that.
Oh, really?
So this dough is very like kind of versatile. You can make it into focaccia.
Okay. And what differentiates focaccia from ciabatta?
The ciabatta has we cut them into squares. So the moment that we put the bread on the counter, we cut it into squares and just put it on parchment paper.
Okay, so it's just a smaller sort of like roll.
Smaller focaccia, yeah. And then you don't put dimples in there. You just let it bake.
Okay, gotcha. That makes sense. And cheese as well.
And cheese, yeah. I like a lot of cheese. So
We're talking about comfort food. You gotta go all out.
Yeah, and it's a great like vegetarian option too if you're trying to serve this for Thanksgiving. So there we go.
And let's see. I have one question. Is it the oil that keeps the focaccia soft?
Yeah, for the top of the focaccia, the oil makes it crispy.
Makes it crispy. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's what crisps up on the top.
That's what crisps up on the top. Correct. Yeah.
So this looks ready to go, right?
So once you put the topping.
And this is cheddar cheese, right?
This is cheddar cheese and tomato, and then half of this is rosemary.
Okay.
You can bake it in the oven. I would say preheat your oven earlier, like an hour before you start baking.
It's always a question of mine. Like, how long should you preheat the oven for?
I would say 1 hour just to be safe.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, every oven is different, but you want it to bake at 425 degrees Fahrenheit. So if you can also purchase, if you want to know, sometimes like the oven only has dials, so you can get like this oven thermometer just to be specific to know.
Just to be sure.
Just to be sure, yeah. And
if you put it in too early, that's going to affect the
it's
end
not
result.
For sure, yeah. It's not gonna be as voluminous.
Okay.
Yeah. So 425 degrees Fahrenheit for about 15 minutes.
15 minutes. That's
15,
it. Okay.
1-5.
Okay.
Yeah. And then after 15 minutes, you want to rotate the sheet pan in the oven just to make sure all sides get baked evenly.
because each oven is different.
Each oven is different. It has hot spots, so yeah.
Okay, great. And I remember I was talking with you earlier, and if you're not a vegetarian, bacon could be a
Oh,
good
yeah.
option.
Yeah.
On that
Bacon
show.
and potato would be great,
Yeah,
and cheese.
absolutely.
So go all out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Whatever you want. Yeah.
Whatever you want. Yeah.
Make it as healthy or not as you want.
Yeah.
Okay, it says with such high temperatures, will the parchment paper catch on fire? Is there any danger of that?
No. One thing to look out. You see how there's like a little bit of olive oil in here, like in the corners.
Yeah.
So if you cannot get that into the focaccia,
Mhm.
I highly recommend having another sheet pan in the bottom, so that when it rises, the oil doesn't go to the bottom of the oven and catch fire.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, just to be sure. But yeah, that's a great question actually.
Okay. Great.
Yeah.
Are you actually gonna put it in, or?
We can just. I have the finished product, so I can.
That's right.
Maybe I can show you.
Oh yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
We can compare it.
You can compare.
All right.
There we go.
There it is. Through the magic of television, it's all set.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And so this is just a rosemary, right?
That's just rosemary.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Look at those bubbles. It really,
Yeah.
bubbles up.
it really bubbles up, and you might think that 2 kilo is a little bit much for the dough, but
Uh-huh.
if it's perfect on a half sheet pan.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so let's see. Do you put anything on top at the end? Or?
At the end, you can brush with some olive oil, but to be honest, we already put olive oil prior to baking, so it's gonna be good.
So it's just up to you.
It's just up to you.
But I
Yeah.
forgot to ask about, do you do salt on there? Like
You
sea salt?
You can add sea salt too. But I guess if you're serving for like Thanksgiving, you want to be a little bit mindful for, some of the guests that, can't really eat that much salt. Or,
Right, so you can salt yourself.
yeah,
Put it
yeah,
on
you
the
can serve
table.
it. Yeah,
Okay.
you can serve it yourself.
Great.
So why don't we take a look?
Okay. Cool.
All right,
You've got a bread knife there.
bread knife. Yeah,
So interesting. It's got a little angle on it. So.
yeah, it's got a little angle, so it's like just easier for you to cut the bread.
Mhm.
Just gonna tease it out a little bit, make
Okay.
sure. And then you can use your hand to remove it.
Mhm.
All right. Up a little bit.
This
This is a great example of actually putting the olive oil on the sides of the sheet pan to be
Oh, yeah.
generous, especially the bottom part of the parchment.
because it'll help you take it out, and it's delicious. So,
Yeah, it's delicious.
Kind of a win-win, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Great.
So, yeah.
Beautiful.
So that's the thickness that you're aiming for. It's pretty thick.
Okay.
And then if you can hear this
Yep.
crunchy bubbles,
Yes.
that's what you want. That's from the olive oil too.
Okay, that's what it's good. I've seen recipes where you could actually put it under the boiler at the very end too. Would you recommend that, or is just to crisp it up, or does it need it?
That depends on the oven too.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to do broiler, put on a broiler, you can, but make sure you look out for it so it doesn't get burnt.
Right, you can ruin it very easily.
Yeah.
Which would be a tragedy.
Yeah.
Let's see, the total cooking time. I'm sorry.
The
15
total-
minutes on one side.
Right,
and then,
15 minutes on one side, rotate it, and then another 5 minutes.
Another 5
So
minutes.
total about 20 minutes.
Great. And what are you? And you're looking for just a golden kind of top. At the
You want to make sure all sides are evenly baked.
Uh-huh.
So you make sure there's no sides that blotches of just brown color.
Mhm.
And we actually bake it out of this oven. This is a convectional oven. So if you have an oven at home that has the fan, it's actually great, and it's going to be helpful
That's better.
to distribute the heat more evenly.
Is that what that happens? It just distributes the heat throughout the oven a little bit more evenly?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, for sure.
Great.
But any home oven should work.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Let's see. I think we have a couple more questions. What is the measurement of a half sheet pan?
The measurement of a half sheet pan would be 9" by 13. 9 by 13
Okay.
inch, I
And
think.
usually you say a half sheet pan.
Half
People,
sheet pan.
people will know what you're talking
People will
about,
know, yeah.
right?
And if you type it on Amazon or any restaurant equipment website,
Right.
half sheet pan should usually come out.
Yeah. There's the one in Oakland, East Bay.
East Bay
Restaurant
equipment,
Depot,
yeah,
yeah,
something like that.
right,
Yeah.
yeah. Kind of industrial thing. And Yeah, just stacks and stacks of those.
Stacks and stacks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. We have one more question. Okay. Who is the chef?
Who's the chef? My name is Gabby.
And it's East Bay Bakery, right?
Yeah.
And just once again, where can people find you at the farmers markets?
Yeah, so we are open at Orinda Farmers Market every Saturday.
And that's in the morning?
That's in the morning from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. And then Sundays at the Walnut Creek Farmers Market, also from 9 to 1.
Okay. And as you can tell, you said earlier that you're doing Thanksgiving delivery, is that right?
We do, yeah. So we are actually doing a home delivery for Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
We deliver pies, cakes, and assortment of goodies.
Great.
And we deliver on Wednesday before the Thanksgiving. Yeah, from 3 to 5 p.m.
Great.
Yeah.
I mean, as we all know, we're all flying around on Thanksgiving. Maybe a little less this year, but it's always nice to have something delivered to you.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like you don't even have to bother to make pies, which is like saves you 5 hours or something like
It
that.
saves you up in space, right?
Yeah.
What kind of pies do you have?
We have pumpkin pie, pecan pie, and the classic apple pie.
The classics, right?
The classics, yeah. Should
Yeah.
we cut this up?
Yeah,
and
let's get in there.
see?
Gonna show the
Show the crumbs.
yeah, it really is.
Yeah, it's very
It's
soft.
so soft, yeah.
Yes, and you can see the bubbles. So
Mhm.
then again, with focaccia, you shouldn't work it too much. You shouldn't press on it too much, but just enough until you see the crevices.
The less you work it, the
The less you
lighter
work it, the
and
lighter it
fluffier
becomes.
it'll be.
Yeah.
Right.
And the pizza flour actually is very soft and it works really well with the olive oil. It creates this like really soft and spongy bread.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Do you mind if we try a bite? Is that okay?
Yeah.
It's almost a similar consistency to what it was in dough form. So
Yeah.
soft.
You can definitely do less flour and water, but 2 kilo really makes it super bulky for the half sheet pan. Yeah. Go ahead.
It's so spongy and light,
Yeah.
and that crispy crunch. One more bite.
Yeah. Go for it.
I skipped lunch. This will be my lunch.
Your lunch. You can take this home too if you like.
I will. Maybe we can send this out to the winner. One of the winners.
Oh, yeah.
Well, let me get through a couple more questions. Let's see. What type of pizza flour and yeast do you recommend?
Right. Yeast, I recommend instant yeast. And then for pizza flour, I'm not sure. I think maybe Whole Foods has or like specialty grocery store has. I recommend double zero. Double zero is great.
Okay.
Or, if you can just walk into your local pizza store and just ask if you can buy a pizza flour.
Right.
They probably have the double zero.
Okay. Yeah, these days they're allowed to sell a lot of that flour. A lot of places are selling groceries, so you can do that.
For sure.
Let's see. Okay. Oh, this is a good question. What are the best ways to store uneaten bread so it stays fresh as long as possible?
Yeah. So breads like focaccia and baguettes, they actually need to be stored in an airtight container.
Okay.
So I highly recommend if you make like a half sheet pan and you cannot finish the rest of the half, you can cut it up into squares and then, like cut it up into this size and then half it. So this makes a great sandwich size.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
So you can like put it in a Ziploc or something like that and then store in the freezer. And that should last you for like, I don't know, like a month or two
Great. So,
if you want.
and when you, how do you just let it come up to room temperature, or do you after the freezer?
Yeah, if you know you're going to thaw the bread, I'd say overnight, and then the next morning you can make like a breakfast sandwich.
Good idea.
Yeah. And then any other breads that has like, I would say, creams or whatnot, I highly recommend to just put it in also in a container, but at room temperature.
At room temperature. Okay.
Yeah. Ziploc works.
Ziploc. Okay.
Ziploc works.
Or Tupperware. Or something.
Tupperware works too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Any more questions. Let's see. Where do we order for Thanksgiving delivery?
Oh yeah, you can order in our website at theeastbaybakery.com.
Great. And I first found you through Instagram. What's your Instagram? I highly recommend checking it out. It'll make you hungry.
So our Instagram handle is @EastBayBakeryOfficial.
Okay, go follow her. It's worth it. Let's see. Okay. Let's see. I thought bread and pizza flour were the same. I thought they were both high gluten. How do they differ?
Right. So bread flour depends. They both have high gluten content. So the difference actually is the protein level of the flour itself.
Okay.
So bread flour has, I want to say, about 13%, and then double zero, I want to say maybe 10 to 11. So slightly less protein content, and that also reflects on the gluten structure of the bread.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Well, let's see. I think that's about it. We don't have this is the most amount of questions we've ever got. So I think that's a sign that people want to make
That's
this.
great.
And I think that's it. I would just like to thank our sponsor, Xfinity, again. Thank you so much for sponsoring us and helping put this together. Thanks everybody for joining. I want to remind everybody that we're going to be doing this again next week. We're going to be doing a French onion soup with Essen DeCarian of Essen Restaurant. That'll be next Thursday at 3 p.m. So please join us for that. I can't wait to taste that. And we'd just love to thank Gabby again for taking us through that. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Happy to show them.
Yeah. And get out there to the farmers market and support her and order some pies.
Yes.
So thanks again for thanks for listening and for watching, and have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.